I built companies for 6 straight years. 6 straight years, I failed. I failed again and again and again. I think I built over 20 companies. It was all around the same thing. I kept trying different business models. I thought I needed a network, so I would go and I literally did everything you could possibly imagine under the sun to start a business, and I still failed. 6 years of failing. And then one day I just stepped away and I really thought about, what is the problem I'm solving? Why am I solving it? I built like 20 businesses over 6 straight years. I built over 30 businesses. So it was all around the same thing. First, I started in college. That completely failed. Then I went to go get a job and I still wanted to build a business. So I built it on the side for several years. Then I got extremely burnt out and really discouraged. Then I basically didn't build any business for an entire year and I was incredibly depressed because I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. Then I finally decided to quit my job to start building a business. Raised a bunch of money from investors, hired a bunch of people. That completely failed. Got returned all the money to investors, fired everyone on my team, started again. And finally, on my last business, within 6 months, I hit 6 figures in revenue and I had an exact understanding of why I did that and finally hit me. All the things that I was chasing, building a really big network, raising a ton of money, hiring a bunch of people, all of that was actually completely wrong. That was just not at all how you built a business. And I wish 6 years ago someone had told me how you actually build a business, because I wouldn't have failed flat on my face for so long. And I probably would have been here a lot earlier. And it would have saved me a ton of money and a ton of time. So that's what I want to do here today. I want to run you through the exact blueprint, step by step, of how you should go about starting a business. Whether you want to build $100 million tech company, whether you want to build a small solo business that makes a couple $100K a year, whatever it is, the steps are exactly the same. It is not networking with 1 million people. It's not knowing rich and wealthy people. It is not having a rich dad who's going to fund your business. That's actually not how you build a successful company. So that's what I want to talk about today. What do you actually need to set yourself up for success? And what are the actual steps you need to take so that you don't fall flat on your face like I did over 20 times? Number 1, and this is the thing that everyone gets wrong. Most people never get past step 1, but you need to identify a problem that's actually worth solving. Not come up with $1 million business idea, not come up with a solution that you think people are going to want. No, figure out what problem do you want to solve. And really, there are only 2 ways to do that well. Number 1, you can go and build an audience. You can build a giant community rallied around a mission or a niche or something that you care about, and you can work with the community, survey them, and try to understand what their biggest problems are. And then you can go build a solution for them. The second way is you can join a tech company, specifically join a medium-sized tech company, and go figure out what are the team's biggest problems. What are the biggest problems stopping them from making their company money? And then go build a solution to that problem. The first way, you would build a B2C company, and the second way, you would build a B2B company. There quite literally is no other way to truly identify a problem you're solving. The third option is build something for yourself. But the only way you're going to know that the problem that you have, other people have too, is if you go and find out who are the other people who have it, so you understand who your ideal customer is. One of my biggest regrets building a business, and the reason why I wasn't successful for so long, is I did not have an audience or community that I created rallied around me so that I can iterate fast and learn fast. There is no better way to understand how deeply someone is experiencing a problem and how many people are experiencing a problem than if you had a giant audience for yourself that you could just ask them the question and you could instantly get hundreds and thousands of responses. You can go into the next step of building a business with so much confidence. You don't have that audience. You might think that this is a real problem you're solving, but in actuality, most people don't actually have the problem, or maybe the problem just isn't urgent enough that people are willing to pay for it. So a lot of the times people think that the first step to building a business is having an idea. That couldn't be further from the truth. Ideas are cheap. Ideas are meaningless. Everyone has 1,000,001 ideas. I can give you a business idea tomorrow. That doesn't mean it's a good idea. There's only truly one way to see if it's a good idea, is if people are going to be willing to pay for a solution to that problem. So let's talk about step 2. How do you actually find that out? You have to build an MVP. An MVP is a minimal viable product. It's the least amount of money and time you're going to spend on creating the first version of this product so you can put it out into market and test it and see if anyone cares about it. I will guarantee you the first 10 MVPs you build, nobody is going to care about it. But guess what? You spent so little resources and so little time on it that when no one wants it, it's not that disheartening. It's not that discouraging, and you have enough energy to wake up tomorrow tomorrow and build another MVP that is a little bit closer to what people might buy. And you keep repeating that and you keep iterating on that until all of a sudden you get the right signals that, okay, people really want this. People are urgently and desperately asking for a solution to this, asking to buy my product. And you know why you know that you have enough conviction at this point? Because your MVP is probably something incredibly shitty. It's probably broken. It's probably really inefficient. It's probably not a good product. It has probably no design, no aesthetics, and yet people are still begging to use it. There is no problem more urgent than that. When you have that sign, go build the product. This is also another part that people get wrong. They think they need to hire like 10 engineers before they can create any semblance of a product. A Google form can operate as an MVP. Do you know how many Google forms I made to validate a problem and to see if like people would want a solution to it? So many. Do you know how many businesses I would have started and wasted a bunch of money and time had I just built the product without doing the Google form before? But the Google form made it very clear that this was just not a good business idea. You could use a no-code tool like Bubble and you could literally build an app literally with plug and play in a couple of hours rather than investing in building the full app, and see people will use it. See people will actually go to your website and actually download the link and try to use it. You want them to get stuck and complain to you that this is a terrible product, make it better. Because you know what that sign is? They're begging you to make it better because they really desperately want to use it. It's a great green flag. It's a great sign for your business. And then you want to continue to iterate. You want to keep iterating on this MVP, adding the tiniest little addition, tiniest little feature, making it slightly more sophisticated, getting it to a bunch more people, getting more feedback, seeing if this was moving in the right direction. And that is how you end up getting a full-fledged product. You don't want to go in and be like, okay, my Google form says, or my no-code website says people want it, so I'm going to go now hire 20 engineers abroad and I'm going to put a bunch of my personal money into building the business and go build the product. Because very likely the product you're going to end up building is going to be very far from what people actually want. Instead, once you take that no-code app that you've made, go to what is the next step that's just a little bit more sophisticated with spending the least amount of resources. Again, every MVP that you put out and you get good feedback that people want it, again, you want to invest in the least amount of resources to make that MVP a tiny bit more sophisticated. And at some point, you're going to get a very sophisticated product as you continue to iterate it, and you're going to hit product market fit. So let's talk about product market fit. What is that? Product market fit is when you have some semblance of a product. It's actually a real product. It's something sellable. It's not super shitty like your MVP. And it's something, again, you iterated towards and you got there over, 4 or 5 MVPs and different iterations and versions of that and refining and making it a little better. Product market fit is something that if you know, you know. Like, I can't say it's this many downloads or it's this many customers or it's this much money in the bank. No, it's an if you know, you know situation. And a really good way to know is if you are spending all your time trying to fulfill demand of the product and there's just simply not enough time in the day to meet demand. Like, you are not sleeping trying to fulfill orders. You are desperately needing to hire. You are desperately needing to scale. That is when you know you have product market fit. It'll be so crystal clear and obvious to you. I promise you, if you're even asking the question, well, how do I know I have product market fit? You don't. Like, simply by the fact that you don't know means you don't, because it's one of those things where it's so obvious. And most companies, they never actually get to literally step 2 of building a business. They will spend years iterating on this product, building this feature, building that feature, trying to get into people's hands and failing. That's another reason why I say step 1 is build an audience, not build a product. Because guess how you iterate on that MVP? You need people to iterate it with on. You need people who are willing to give you feedback, people who would potentially be interested in something. So when you start with an audience in step 1, you're way more likely to be successful. You could go work at a company and try to go understand what the employees need to be more productive at their job, to make the company more money. But the problem with that is then you could only build B2B infrastructure software, which is a very small category of businesses that you could build. So unless you're very sure that you want to go down that path, a much better path that is much broader and can allow you to be way more creative and way more open-minded about the type of business you could build. Go and build an audience. Go and build a personal brand. Have the ability to reach a massive amount of people so that when you're going through this MVP process and you're trying to hustle to PMF, at least you're not separately hustling trying to get someone to give you feedback. You have your audience, they care and are aligned with what you care and aligned about. You can continuously get their feedback through polls, surveys, reading their comments, seeing the type of content they like, and iterating from there. You're going to be much faster at getting PMF that way. Now, I run a media company, so you must be wondering, well, what does this have to do with media? If I'm running a media business, I don't have a product. It's the exact same thing, ironically. Instead of product market fit, you're actually looking for content market fit, right? So instead of iterating on this product every day, you're iterating on your content every single day. You're seeing what people like, what people don't, and then you're making it 1% better the next day. You're not going and hiring an entire camera team, right? MVP. You're in your bedroom, you're putting up a camera, you're saying something, and you're seeing what they like, and then the next day, you're taking that information and you're making the video a little bit better, and then you're taking the information again and make it a little bit better until you have content market fit. What is content market fit? Every single thing you touch goes viral because you know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly what the people want. You know exactly what your brand is online. And trust me, if you can get to content market fit, if everything you touch brings views, you can build a media company that makes just as much money as a tech company, if not more. So it's the same exact thing. Use the least amount of resources possible to get that feedback, continue to iterate forward until it's very obvious you have way more demand than you can handle. But now that you have way more demand you can handle, what next? We have to think about a team, right? Now that you have way too much demand to handle yourself, you need to bring in people to help you so that you can scale your business. So let's talk about that. The number one question that all businesses have to ask is, should you raise money? And in my opinion, I think 99.9% of companies should not. Because the only companies that should raise money are those that are one day have the potential to be worth $1 billion. And I can promise you most products, most companies will never become billion-dollar businesses. $1 billion is a lot of money. And the reason is because of the nature of venture capital. The way that venture capital works, it's through the concept of a power law. The theory is, I'm going to invest in a ton of companies, and it's okay if they all fail, because I, as a venture capitalist, just need one company, and that one company is going to return my fund. It's going to make up for all the companies that failed and more. And so what they're really looking for here is a very, very big outcome. Because in order for your company to be so massively successful that it makes up for all the other companies in their fund that failed, it's gonna have to be ginormous. So if your company doesn't have the potential to be absolutely ginormous, VCs are not gonna want to invest in your company. And let's say you can trick them into investing in your company. Well, you're going to be the most screwed at the end of it, because let me do a little bit of math for you to understand why you don't want their money. Let's say you raise $20 million for your company, okay? And let's say you gave away 50% of your company, you raised a couple of rounds, okay? So whatever. You have now raised $20 million. But turns out it's not $1 billion company. So you sell that company for $30 million. But guess what? You owe your investors $20 million, because guess what? They're not just giving you free money. They want that return. They want that money back. So when you sell your company for $30 million, well, you have to first return their $20 million, and then you have to take the $10 million that you earned, and then you have to divide that amongst your investors, right? You don't get to keep all the 10 million. And then at the end of it, maybe you're left with a couple million as a founder. Well, guess what? You have a team. Now you got to distribute it to your team. They need some equity too. If you have a co-founder, you got to distribute it to them as well. And then by the end of it, if you're lucky, you'll end up with like a 6-figure salary. But guess what? You earn those 6 figures of average time to build a successful company and have an exit is like around 10 years. So you're saying in 10 years, you made $100,000? I'm pretty confident if you just had a job, which was way less stress and way easier to do, you would have made way more money than $100,000. So why would that be a good outcome for you to sell your company at $30 million? But now let's talk about a world where you don't take venture capital and you sell your company for $30 million and no one has equity in your company. You own 100% of your company. Well, now you have $30 million in your bank account, and that is so much money. That is life-changing money. And so at that point, the 10 years you spent working on your business is completely worth it. You would have never made $30 million working a 9-to-5 job. So that's why I say 99.9% of companies should not be venture-backed and should be bootstrapped, because the likelihood you building a billion-dollar company is extremely low. And I learned that lesson the hard way. I went and raised money. I raised a bunch of money and I built product and I hired and I did all the things, only to realize that, holy shit, I was never gonna make what I was building a billion-dollar company, because the TAM, and if you don't know what TAM is, the total addressable market, which just means all the potential buyers that would possibly want what I was building, would never add up to $1 billion in revenue, even if every single person in the TAM would buy what I was selling, which is never true, by the way. You can never have 100% of TAM. Like, that doesn't work. That would be a monopoly. And like most companies, I would say, or almost argue, no companies truly have a monopoly. There's always emerging players. And so to believe that I would actually have the entire TAM obviously is ridiculous. The fact that even if I was in this hypothetical world, we're gonna have the entire TAM, it still wouldn't hit $1 billion and I wasn't gonna make any money. Why am I even building this company if I'm not even gonna create financial freedom for myself? I'm basically a slave. I'm working for $0 across this potential exit. So I stopped. I returned all the money. I killed the app. I let go of my team and I was like, okay, well, I need to build a different company, or I need to start again, even if I'm building the same company, but do it in a bootstrap way. And let's say you do still need money. Like, let's say you can't begin. You still need a little bit of money to build that MVP, to get this off the ground. Maybe you're in hardware or you're in some industry that's not $0 to start. There are so many alternate funding options, from crowdfunding to grants to family friend rounds to winning pitch competitions. Like, there's a lot of options. You obviously have to hustle. I'm not saying it's simple. It's pretty hard to do, but I can tell you raising a round from investors is not easier. It's just as hard. Now, let's say you are building a tech company. There is some software component to it, and it's very possible that it can have $1 billion outcome. So venture capital doesn't make a lot of sense for you. You do not want to raise your money until you hit that some indication of product market fit, because investors, I hate to say it, they're not that savvy. They're not that smart. Like, they're not going to just blindly throw money at your face. They need some indication that this is going to go somewhere. And unless you've been best friends with these venture capitalists your entire life, or your family is a part of that world, no one is realistically going to take a blind bet or a blind risk on someone they don't know or have no conviction in. So you can either build that conviction in, hey, you've known me for years, and you can trust me that I really mean it when I say I'm going to really work hard in building this business. That's usually never true. But you can also say, hey, I can really build that trust because look at my numbers. My numbers speak for itself. Look at how many people are begging for my product. Look at how much demand there is. And that really is all they're looking for in a pitch deck. But here's a secret to fundraising that no one tells you. It's not about knowing VCs. That'll only get you so far. Sure, you can know VCs and get your round funded, but that doesn't mean you're going to build a successful company. Execution is everything. You're just going in debt at that point. You're not actually building a great company and executing. The secret to VC that people don't know is that VCs want to invest in the companies that don't actually need the money because they actually have a product that works and is selling itself. And if you have a product that works that's selling itself, well, guess what? You don't actually need money at that point. And so this is kind of like pointless advice at this point, because I'm basically saying, well, the only companies that are actually going to successfully raise money are the ones who don't actually need it, which is just not really giving you much to go off of. So this is what I'm going to tell you. Well, what if you can create the illusion that you are one of those companies? That you're filled with demand, that you don't actually need the money. Well, then all the VCs would come to you. So the secret to raising money from VCs is to give the illusion that you do not need them. And so I will do a whole other video on this, but how to actually create the illusion, scarcity mindset in venture capitals, really create that FOMO and really make them feel like you don't need them at all and they'd be lucky to be on your cap table. Well, that's a whole video in itself and a whole tutorial in itself, but I'll leave you with that to think about. You have to play that whole mind game with VCs. It's really how it works. I have been there, done that. I'm a VC myself. I invest in companies myself, and trust me, I have very little excitement about a company that's begging me for money. It's like when you're like begging a boy to date you. Your human brain basically goes off and like signals there must be something wrong here. If they're begging, that means they're desperate. It means other people have not invested or no one else wants to date this person. And your fight or flight kicks in and your defense mechanisms kick in. You're like, you know what? There must be something wrong with this company. And you start to look for it. And guess what? Every company in the early stage, there's 5,000 million things wrong with it. So if you start looking, you're going to find something and you're going to lose conviction pretty fast and you're probably not going to invest. Now, let's say you're able to successfully raise, or you're able to successfully bootstrap your company, which is you're selling a little bit of product, you're reinvesting it back in your company, then you're using that money to build a little bit of a better product, you're selling that, you're reinvesting, and you're kind of going through that. Now you have like a pretty good base. What do you do next? Well, number one is you gotta be frugal as shit. Like, you really need to have that mindset in every part of your business. How do I spend the least amount of money as possible? Which brings me to the next phase of building a business, which is hiring a team. team, right? That is most likely going to be your highest expense, paying people to actually run your business. How do you actually hire? Well, I believe you should delay hiring as long as possible. The only time you should be hiring is when you physically cannot meet demand. The way you want to hire people early in your company is you have to find obsessive people just like you. People who are willing to work beyond the 9 to 5, who care super deeply about your business. That is why a lot of early companies give significant equity to employees to incentivize them to care as much as the founders. Because when you're early in building a company, you need that type of character to be a part of your company, to actually take this thing that you started from nothing and actually grow it into a massive thing. And remember, smaller teams will always work faster because there's less communication that needs to happen between people. So don't grow your team for the sake of it. Don't grow your team just because you've now raised money from venture capitals or you not have a bunch of money in the bank. You should be hiring because it's literally the only possible way to scale and grow your company, that you're desperate and you're dying without hiring this person. And try to keep it as small as possible. And the way you keep it as small as possible is you hire people who literally do multiple people's worth of work. You can call it toxic. That's just how the startup world works. If that's not you, first of all, you're not going to make it as building a company, and you're not going to be able to find people who similarly have that level of obsession and commitment as you, because really, really hardworking people don't want to work for not hardworking people. So keep that in mind. The fifth and final step. So let's talk about marketing. People really see marketing as this creative, artistic thing, and I actually think it could not be further from that. Marketing is actually very much rooted in the scientific approach, in experimentation. The best way to get your product out there is actually running experiments. Thinking of some way to market it and get the word out there. Literally, this is like experiments you should be running on a daily basis. Go and see how many people resonate with that. How many people did it reach? And if it didn't reach that many people, wake up tomorrow the next day and do a new experiment. And keep running different experiments and ways to actually reach your customer. And use data to figure out whether it's working or not. Analyze, run the numbers, see with this campaign how many customers converted, with this campaign how many customers converted. And then when you have something that takes off, that one tiny marketing campaign is getting thousands, millions of new customers, whatever the number is, double down, triple down on it, invest everything, run 100 of those campaigns, put in the ad dollars. But until you have something that hits, do not invest time and resources into it. And the best way that you can actually get your product in the hands of people, the way that your company will win the race and beat its competitors, is if you spend the least amount of money to acquire one customer. So how do you know how to do that? Well, you have to run experiments. You have to try different ways to acquire customers. Calculate how much money you spent to run that marketing idea. Calculate how many new customers it got, and calculate how much money you spent per customer. So let's say you spent $10 on a marketing campaign and you got 10 customers. Then it costed $1 to acquire a customer. Obviously, you want to get that number as close to zero as possible. Let's say tomorrow you run another marketing campaign. Okay, you spent $20. You got 4 customers. Okay, the $1 per customer one was better. Now it's day 3. You do a new campaign. Okay, you spent $300. You got 3,000 customers. That's way less than $1. You know that one's the one. That one's viral. Now you want to double down, triple down on that campaign. Instead of getting 3,000 users, you want to get 30,000 users and 300,000 users. You have to keep running experiments to see what is the least amount of money I can spend to acquire a customer. And when you have something that's so cheap, so close to zero, and is able to get thousands of customers onboarded onto your product from running that marketing campaign, you want to just run that machine until your bank account is dry. That is how you build a massive, massive company. So that's really the 5 steps to start any business. This is by no means the rubric and the blueprint to start a product business. You can run the same blueprint to run a media business, to run a lifestyle business, to run a CPG product, to run a merch store, whatever it is. You gotta just remember these few things. You really have to just think about, what is the problem you're solving? How do you actually get in the hands of people? How do you actually have a really badass team? How do you stay super frugal throughout the process so you don't run out of money? And how do you have the commitment and curiosity and obsession and work ethic to wake up every single day and hustle and work overtime to really make this impossible thing possible? Because building a company is quite literally the hardest thing you could ever do. And all these steps directly protect you from the 3 biggest reasons why companies fail. Number 1, they run out of cash. Number 2, they have a co-founder breakup. And number 3, they aren't actually solving a real problem that people have. So imagine if you can somehow get through these 3 biggest failures of a company, the chances of you succeeding skyrocket to 99%. And by following these steps, you can protect yourself against any of these things from happening. Don't be like me and waste 6 years trying to figure out, understand the basic steps to starting a business. Remember, the best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time is now.